Hello, this is Cody C. Engdahl. I'm the author of multiple books. I don't have an official open because this is a very informal show that I'm building here. This is my YouTube channel, which I am now. You may have seen me do a lot of different things from reporting to guitar reviews. Now I'm using it for advancing my writing career, mostly sharing my journey with you as a writer and a micro publisher and a book marketer. You may be one of those things. And if you are, by the way, if you are any of those things and you would like to come on to the show yourself, I would love to have you. In fact, I've decided because I mean, at some point, I'd like this to be a big enough channel where I have to be exclusive, not to you guys, but I'm saying like, if I have thousands and thousands of people watching, which some of the YouTube channels that I watch do, I probably wouldn't put the link out to everybody so we could get thousands of people playing the Brady Bunch with me. But at this point, I put the link in the show notes, or I'm sorry, I put the link in the chat. So if you come on and you're like, hey, I'd like to jump on there and talk to you. In fact, I'm going to say this right now. If you're an author and you want, or someone within the literary world, and you want to come on and talk about your book, you got a new book coming out or whatever, or you got one that's been out, and you want to kick up some sales. I mean, I don't know how much I can promise you in reach because I'm still building this channel, but I would love to have you on. Just the other day and I'm bearing the lead. So we're going to talk about Annie Whitehead's The Sins of the Father. That's what this show is about, this particular episode. We're going to get to that in a minute. A great up-and-coming author, Baptiste Pinson-Wu. Man, this guy, I love independence because I've been saying this, like, if you want to go with a big publisher, you better be pitching a book that is Romans, Vikings, or Nazis. But if you're an independent, because they're not going to take a chance on you on writing about the Austro-Prussian War like me. Pinson-Wu has been writing about Asian history. He's got a trilogy about the War of the Three Kingdoms that I think took place in the 300s AD, maybe the late 200s AD. But he has a new book coming out pretty soon called Undead Samurai, and he was on Twitter, and he was like, hey, I'm just, calling out there as anybody wants to do an interview with me on their podcast or their YouTube channel. And, I don't got that big of a YouTube channel. So it's about the same size as Pinson-Wu. But the difference is a lot of my subscribers, and I love you guys if you're still around, probably subscribed to me back when I was doing guitar video. So I don't know. But what I do is I have over 3,000 followers on Facebook, and I'm getting close to about 1,000 on Twitter, and I got a few hundred on LinkedIn and a couple other places. So before we go live, I put this out on all those things, hoping that we get some people in from there, because what I'm really trying to do with this is with this channel is I just want to build it, but I don't want it to make it like the main thing I do, and that's some people make a living at YouTube, and that'd be great. But I think you really need to pick your target. So there are some people that have talent. I think talent is very general, and you come to think that your talent is very specific to like playing the piano or playing basketball. But think about it, if piano or basketball didn't exist, you'd still have that talent. It just, you would be using it for something else. So if you're a talented person, you could spread that talent too thin by trying to do too many things. And I've seen people out there, and I won't name any names, but I know people who they got their toe in everything, from music and acting and writing and art and blah, blah. And they never really get anywhere with any of it because they're trying to be all things and they could be very good at any one of those things. And they probably have the talent to be good at all of them. But do they have the time? And I have a lot of people say to me, well, you should do a cooking show. You should have a podcast. You should do this and that. those are all great. And I love the people that say that to me, because that means that they believe me and they think I should do those things. But the truth is, there's only so much time and only so much talent anybody has. And so my big focus is writing books. So my big number one thing is I write books and I put them out, hopefully on a regular basis. And that is growing for me. So this is something you have to, I have to pare down other things, like I still practice the fiddle every single day, and I'm still open to doing things, but I'm not making fiddle playing, because the truth is that I have much more of a chance making it big as an author than I do as a fiddle player. But I'm still open to opportunities, of course, and I'll weigh things as they come. But the deal here with this channel is to kind of build it on the side, to do at least a live stream once a week. And in this stream now, what we're going to talk about is basically my, well, not mine, but the journey of being an author. I'm an independent author. I have 5 novels out now. And I don't claim to be an expert in anything, but I have the experience. I've been going through it. So I feel like sharing that journey with you guys, whether you're an author yourself or you're just interested in the process, is a good thing. And I make mistakes and I have victories. And so I like to talk here and share them all. So number one thing I think is, if you're going to be an author, this is the segment where we're now going to get to the thing that's in the title after 6.5 minutes of me rambling. So I think that it's very important, if you're going to be an author, that you need to read. You need to be a reader first. And there are some people out there. I belong to all these author groups on Facebook, and I quit them all because I could not stand the people in them. And anytime I feel like I need to reply to something that is not going to be a nice reply, I instead hide that person. Like political stuff, if I catch myself wanting to reply to somebody about something, then I'm like, okay, it's time to hide this person, because I don't want to lose any friends. Because I don't care. I mean, honestly, I don't care who you vote for. I don't care who you pray to. I don't care who you go to bed with. I just care that you're a decent person, and stop hating people who don't vote your way, sleep with the people you sleep with, or pray to the God that you pray. That's all I'm saying. So when I say, okay, I'm going way too far. Let's get on this. You should be reading. If you're writing books and you say, and this is what I was talking about. Okay, let me reset. Can I back that up and start over from 2 minutes ago? I was on these Facebook groups where people were like, "Oh, I love writing. I'm such a writer, but I hate reading." You're not a writer, sweetheart. You like the image of you being a writer, wearing a tweed jacket and smoking a pipe, but you're not a writer. If you don't love to read, Claire, what's her name? Claire Taylor has a great quote. She says, if you don't have time to read, then you don't have time to write. And I think that's true. And if you listen to her and people like Brian Cohen, they'll say, if you're writing, like, for example, I write novels, you should be reading novels in your genre. And don't worry about it. It's not going to affect your writing too much, because everybody, like a lot of us, write to tropes, and it's okay. You have your own take on things. That's why there's, multiple versions of, like, Robin Hood, or, just any of the stories, Ragnar Lothbrok, all those, people write Zorro, people write the book over and over and over again because everybody's got their own take, and that's fine. That's fine. What I'm trying to say is, I keep doing this. You should be reading other people's work. And that's what I do. And not only do I do it, but I also try to help other authors. So if I read a book and I like it, I give you a 5-star review. Now, some people say, well, is that kind of disingenuous? My feeling is this: I either like the book or I don't like the book. And if I don't like the book, then I'm just not going to say anything about it. And I've read some terrible books that I didn't leave a review or rating, because I'm not going to hurt someone else. I also say that there's a lot of people out there who will give a book like a 1-star review for something stupid, like they didn't like this, or my favorite, or my least favorite, however you want to put it, is people say, well, they wouldn't have said that back then. And like, I've had that, and I'm like, no, I did the research. I actually look up phrases to see when this phrase started. And yes, they would have said that back then. And now that's one thing, because I write 19th century, but I got friends that write medieval, where they're not even speaking in a language that you would recognize, even if they're in England. English, the way we understand it, is hardly recognizable even 400, 500 years ago. People think that Shakespeare is Old English. No, Shakespeare's the beginning of modern English. He's not Old English, he's not Middle English, he's modern English. And some people can't go to a Shakespeare play because he might as well be speaking Chinese to them. Anyway, that's a big intro. Now we're getting to 10 minutes. So I read a lot of other writers, and let's jump into this, and then we'll back up a little bit, and I'll talk about how I came to read this book. But I want to tell you about Annie Whitehead's book, The Sins of the Father. Let's do share screen, and I got this already pulled up. All right, here we go. Let me just make sure that I'm still on camera. Yep, there I am. Look how handsome I am. Okay, great. And I'm getting a hat stretcher. I should be very careful because they like to display what's in your cart. Any way of shutting that down? No, let's go right to the cart. Okay, I don't like that. That's not a good function. Amazon should be able to let me put that so I don't embarrass myself with what I'm buying. All right, so this is Annie Whitehead's book right here, and it's book 2 of I guess a two book series. I always say this right. Eklingis. It's the dynasty that ruled Mercia in the I think the late 600s. 658 is where this book starts, I believe. So let's just get right into it. Oh, you know what? My review is not up yet. That's right. Okay, I'm still waiting for that to be approved by Amazon. Sometimes they approve it very quickly. I think they got an eye on me because I reviewed my own book, and you're not supposed to do that. But my thing is, okay, if I go to the page and there's a thing that says review the book here, well, okay. Don't mind if I do, but you're not supposed to review your own book. But I also feel like, well, how much of a difference am I going to make once the people start reading this en masse? So let me figure out a good way to pull up my review. Let's see here. I'll do this. We'll shut this guy down because I'll probably get in trouble for listening to this guy on YouTube. And okay, I got a package coming today. Let's see here. I think the best way. Okay, we'll go to Goodreads.com. So when I review a book, I typically I'll review it on Amazon, and then I'll copy and paste that review into Goodreads, and then I'll use the Goodreads to share it to my Facebook, my personal Facebook profile, the Engdahl House Facebook page, which is the page for my company, my doing business as, and then what else? And then my group, the Engdahl House Readers and Writers. I'll share it on Twitter. Usually on Twitter, I'll @ the author. At first, I was a little shy doing that because I was like, I don't want to look like too much like a fanboy. But then I thought, well, if I were an author, and I do this, if I get a good review, I'm usually going to share it. Sometimes I even share bad reviews because I like to say, okay. And if it's a bad review, usually what I'll do, actually for both, I will hide the person's identity, but I'll share it so I can talk about it, All right, let's see here. I'm trying to find my way back to where I can read my own reviews on Goodreads. Let's see here. All right, these are in chronological order, but they're starting with the very first that I've reviewed. So we got Sins of the Father. Okay, great. Here we go. Hang in there. I'm going to make this all worth it in a minute. Okay, and And then that is the general page. Where is my review? I'm so sorry. My computer is acting pretty clunky lately, and it's hard to scroll. I'm trying to. Oh, there we go. Coding. Okay, great, excellent. All right, so I'm going to come back here. This is live, folks. It's live television, so anything can happen. So we're going to stop sharing that screen, and instead, I'm going to share. Let's see. Let's do a window. Here we go. I'm going to share that. Okay, and that's the way to go. All right, let me just check, make sure I'm still on camera, and that's not what I wanted to check. I want to check this instead. Excellent. Okay. All right, I'm going to be not able to see the chat for a minute. So if you're on and you're writing something, I'll get to it. All right, so this is my review on Goodreads, and like I said, I review it on Amazon, and then I copy and paste that review on Goodreads so it exists in both places. And I think you should do that for authors that you like, and then I'll take the Goodreads article, which is more shareable, and I'll share that to Facebook, my page, group, and profile. I share it to I share it on Twitter. I share it on LinkedIn, and I also create a blog post, which is just copying and pasting it with a little formatting for my I can't think. What is my blog post? My blog is on WordPress. Yeah, I create a WordPress article. And it's great because I have people, I forget, that subscribe to me, and every time I post something there, I get what do you call it? Likes. So it's just a way to broadcast yourself. You got to remember that we're independents here. Even if you're with a big publisher, you still have to be marketing yourself. And I won't get too far off topic, but people are worried and complaining about AI taking their jobs. AI can't outbrand you. And that's, in the end, you got to be a good writer. You got to write good stories, all that. But outside of that, you have to be good at branding yourself. There are a million books out there about early Anglo-Saxons in Britain, but only a few are written by Annie Whitehead, and I would say you should be reading hers. And there's some others that I'm really big fans of as well. But Annie Whitehead's one of the good ones, and she has a brand. So here's my review. Excuse me. The headline is richly textured with detail only a medieval scholar could bring, and I will qualify that statement in a second. Sins of the Father should really be called Sins of the Fathers, because it follows the children of both King Penda and King Oswy and the ongoing feud between these two royal families. Sins of the Father is a sequel to The Cometh Hour. However, I don't think you need to read that book to understand this one, even though I recommend that you do, because it's also excellent. And that is something that I think is very important, and something I do too. There are some people who write series, but like each book is almost like a standalone in the series. It's like kind of like when you watch Happy Days. It's not a serial, it's not serialized. It's a series that's episodic, which means you can watch any episode out of I gotta plug my computer in. Any episode out of sequence, because it's like it's just like we know who the characters are and all that, and here's a new story every week that you can watch, right? I write more of serialized series, in which means my entire series follows an overarching story, but each book has its own story arc and its own plot. But you have to make sure that you write each book as if it's the first book a reader has picked up in your series. So like The Prussian Prince is book 5, and it'd be great if you read the first 4 books, but I wrote the book as if you didn't, so that you can understand. And I think Annie did the same thing when she wrote The Sins of the Father, that I did read The Cometh Hour, which was great. And I also reviewed that too. But but had I not read that, I still would have been able to understand what was going on. Okay, so going on. Sins of the Father picks up a few years after the Battle of the Windwad. Please excuse me, I do not read Old English very well. Or the Vinvaid, where Penda was slain by Oswi's forces. Wait a minute, that's right. Penda's eldest son takes back the Mercian throne and then reunites with his siblings who've been cast asunder and have been living in hiding since the death of their father. The joy of reunion is short-lived as the old grudges between the families come back to haunt them. Whitehead does a great job of painting 7th century Britain with vivid details like clothing, customs, food, crafts, and medicine. She even gets the flora with the seasons right. I felt I could see, smell, touch, and taste the scenes. The Mercians, Northumbrians, and the Welsh had different and unique cultures from each other. I liked the main character was sensitive and self-conscious and at times full of self-doubt. It made him seem real and relatable and not some biggest dickus with a sword. All the characters were well fleshed out and with understandable motivations. I bet the reason why my review on Amazon hasn't shown up yet is because they're probably mulling over the term biggest dickus. And let me come back or let me at least see if I'm, let me just come back here real quick. I think, I really think that's my term. I don't know if anybody else uses the term like I do, but like in modern film criticism, especially amongst like the geeks, they talk about Mary Sues, and Mary Sues are like these empowered female main characters that are flawless. They have no flaws. They're automatically good at everything. You got 120-pound actresses beating the hell out of 300-pound muscle-bound men because she's awesome, and they call that character a Mary Sue. And certainly there are male versions of that, and I call them biggest dickuses, because they're like, and I've seen this in a lot of literature too. Like people come up with a character, and he's super badass, and he's great at everything, and he's just automatic. He's kind of a chosen one. He's automatically the best sword fighter growing up, and we see a lot of that. Especially in this genre. So I like that Annie had written the main character, who is Ethelred, I believe is, I think is the way you say his name, the way she spells it. It's one of those, and he's a real historical character, by the way. That he's self-conscious, he's kind of shy, he's not the baddest ever, but he's brave when he needs to be, and he lacks self-confidence, and I think that's what makes it, to me, so much more compelling, because I feel like when I read a character like that, I feel like I see myself in him. So great job there, Annie. In the end, this is a tale of how a feud between families can spiral into an endless cycle of tragedy that can last for generations. If you want to visit 7th century Britain, Whitehead takes you there with a well-researched story of Britain's last pagan king and his legacy. Be sure to read the historical note at the end of the book, where she explains much of the real historical aspects of the story. Okay, so let's go back to here. And so that's the review I put out. It's currently live on Goodreads. We'll see what Amazon does. I'm gonna stop sharing that, and I'm going to instead I'm gonna share something else. Okay, let's. How do I do this? No, I don't want to. StreamYard is sharing one of the. Yes, I know. Okay, stop covering things so I can't see what I'm doing. I got little things popping up and telling me why I'm an idiot, and I'm like, yes, I know I'm an idiot. Can you please let me go on with what I'm doing here? Can you please let me continue with my idiocy? Okay, share screen. So we're gonna go back to. Here we go. All right. Yeah. So far, let's see if we refresh this. So far, Amazon's like, you just reviewed yourself, and now you're using the term biggest dickus. We don't know about you. And I gotta be careful, because a friend of mine, I won't name who, cannot leave a review for me because he doesn't know why. He violated some rule, and now, yeah, my review here is still not up. Um, but she's enjoying a 4.6 stars, which is great. You want to be in the 4 range. No one's ever going to maintain 5 stars beyond like their friends and family and biggest fans, because eventually people are going to come in and they're going to give you 4 stars and 3 stars, and then the people who don't like your stuff will give you 2 and 1. And some people say you shouldn't trust 1 stars and 5-star reviews, because the 5 stars are obvious, people who want to help you and you're big fans, and 1 stars are people who are just trying to hurt you. That can be true. It's not always true. Sadly, one of the things that Amazon does is when you're browsing, they'll do like, hey, look at these 4 stars and above books, and yeah, that's great, but I think 3 stars is still not bad. It should be 3 stars and up. I don't know, but I have like Rampage on the River slipped to 3.9 stars. It's now sitting right at 4 stars. That one has the most ratings, most reviews. Perils does a lot better. I can't remember what Perils is. I'm sorry, the Blood for Blood at Nashville is sitting at 4.1. Mexico is much better. And of course, right now, the Prussian Prince is sitting at 5 stars, but that's only 4 ratings. So we'll see what happens as time goes on and see if I get any detractors. The nice thing is, and I'll get back to Annie's thing, but I'll say the nice thing is I finally got out of the American Civil War. And the problem with the American Civil War is that you can't just enjoy it like any other kind of historical fiction, because there's so much like in modern day politics that are still wrapped up and tied to the American Civil War that we're still to this day. I mean, we have in the Supreme Court right now, they're deciding over an amendment that came out of the American Civil War, and they're talking about, like, can someone run for president if they are involved with an insurrection? And I'm not going to get into that, but I was listening to the case because I'm interested in the result. But they're like citing like Confederate officers running for office, and it's like, wow, we're still, America is still reeling from the American Civil War. And if you write in it, you have to be really careful, because the people get mad if you're too kind to the Confederacy, and they'll also get mad if you're vilify the South too much. And somewhere the truth is, tell the truth and be objectively true, and you'll be okay. Yes, the war. Slavery was the reason why the states seceded, and that's what caused the war. But there were noble people fighting in the South, and there were also bad people fighting in the North, and it's all big effing mess. But okay, I digress. So anyway, Annie Whitehead. So that first line that I wrote about, and I can't remember because I already shut it down, about only a medieval scholar could detail that only a medieval scholar could bring, is because that's exactly what Annie is. She's a medieval scholar, and let's go to her page here. She does write novels, but novels is not her main thing. She writes a lot of she writes nonfiction as well, like the Women of Power, Anglo-Saxon England. This is a nonfiction book. She writes Mercia, The Rise and Fall of a Kingdom. For those of you who are not familiar with British history, Mercia was a kingdom during what's called the Heptarchy, which is, I think, Hept means 7. And this is the period after the withdrawal of the Romans, but before the Norman conquest. They call it the sub-Roman period, and they call it the Anglo-Saxon period. And not to get too much into the weeds, but starting with Julius Caesar, the Romans started coming to Britain, and they eventually conquered it, and they held Britain as a Roman colony, I guess. They controlled Britain for about 400 years. And Romanized Britain. And that's where you get Celtic Christians, because Celtic Christians are Christians. It's when the Romans brought Christianity to Britain, and 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 Christianized the Britons living there. Then between 400 and 500 AD, the Romans pull out and basically abandon Britain. And the Anglo-Saxons and the Jews, these are all people that are coming from like basically the Danish peninsula. What's the name of that peninsula? I know the name of it. Jutland. The Jutland Peninsula, where modern day Denmark is. They started coming over in waves, and some people call it a migration. Some people call it an invasion. It wasn't always peaceful, so I'm not going to make any judgment one or the other. But eventually, the Anglo-Saxons pushed the Britons. These are like the Welsh and the Irish and the Picts off to the borders, and the Anglo-Saxons and the Jutes. So those are like three people from the same area, but they're basically the same. Anglos, Saxons, Jutes. They all come from like that Jutland Peninsula area. And I could be wrong. I could be generalizing here, but that's kind of the case. And then what happens is that they start creating kingdoms. And so by the 600s, you have Mercia, which is, I think, in the British Midlands right now. And north of them is Northumbria. And south of them is like Wessex, which is West Saxons, Essex, East Saxons, Sussex, South Saxons. The Saxons basically populate the southern part, and the Anglos. And what's the difference between a Saxon and a Anglo? It's like the difference between someone from Michigan and someone from Ohio. It's like they're slightly different, but they're really the same. They speak the same language. And so during the Heptarchy, you have all these kingdoms that are vying for control, and a lot of them want to be what's called a Britwalda, which means like over king of all Britain. And Mercia at that time was ascendant, but they were under the thumb of the Northumbrian crown. That Northumbria wanted to be the Britwalda. And so, not to get too far in it because I don't know it very well, but Annie's first book in the series called The Cometh Hour, and you can see it here on my screen. And it's about the last pagan king, Penda. And we got to be careful, because when we talk about religion in Britain, there's different kinds of pagans and there's different kind of Christians, right? So there's the oldest known that we know, which are pre-Romans. You have the Druids, and whatever their religion is. I think the modern day Wiccans kind of claim it, but truth be told, no one living today truly understands what the Druid religion was and what they believed. We can only make assumptions. So there was that pagan religion. Well, then the Romans came and they tried to stamp that out, and they literally went to there's a holy island. Can't remember where it is, but there's a holy island where like this was like the headquarters of the Druids, and they just slaughtered them all, and they tried to stamp out Druidism altogether and replace it with their version of Christianity. So once they leave, the Romanized British are left behind practicing the form of Christianity that they had gotten from the Romans. And in the meantime, a whole new batch of pagans are coming from Jutland, and these are the Anglo-Saxons, the Jutes, and they bring their religion, which is very similar to the religion that the Vikings will bring 200, 300 years later, but has evolved a little bit. So like, so the Anglo-Saxons' main god is Woden, but he's the same god that the Vikings later on are worshiping, Odin. See how I'm saying? So this is not the Druidic, I don't know how you say it, but this is not the Druid religion. This is a different pagan religion. And pagan is just like a generalized term, meaning anything that's not Christian. Just like Protestant is everything that isn't Orthodox or Catholic Christianity. And so then the Anglo-Saxons are all pagans, but then Christianity comes back. But now it's not the same form that the leftover Romanized British are practicing, the Celtic Christianity. It's the new and improved Christianity. And I'm not saying it's improved. I'm just saying it's the one that's now being dictated from Rome, because we have a more formalized church and a more kind of an updated version that's coming from the Pope in Rome. And so when this comes to Britain, it's at odds with the older version of Christianity that's left over from the Romans. So this is like Frankish Christianity coming from, I know it's kind of confusing, but there is conflict between the old Roman Celtic Christianity and the new Latin Christianity. At the same time, there's the leftover pagan religion that the Anglo-Saxons brought with them. And of course, somewhere buried deep into the soil and maybe in the spirits of the woods and some of the backwoods people, there's still that old Druid. There might be. Some people say that it survived. Some people said no, it went extinct. And anything today that anybody claims to be that old Druid Wiccan religion is just made up. It's not true. So Penda, during this time in the 600s in Britain, is where all the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms are Christianizing. Penda was the last holdout, and Penda was not. And there was three. There were Christians, there were pagans, and then there were pagans who allowed the Christian God into their pantheon of gods. So like our gods and your gods all exist. Penda was a diehard pagan. He wasn't anti-Christian. He got along with Christians. In fact, he allied himself with Christians against Northumbria. But so just because he wasn't Christian doesn't mean he was against it. It's just that he was just like, yeah, I'm a pagan. This is what I believe, and I'm not changing my mind on these things. He was a little disappointed when his kids started. I mean, spoiler alert, some of his kids become nuns and monks. So the first book, okay, well, let's back up. How did I get involved in this? So I'm a fan of British history, and I have been listening to the British History podcast. And if you are interested in British history, go listen to it. It's got several years of content, starting from like prehistory and like the geographic formation of Britain to right now we're past the Norman conquest, but we still are talking about William the Bastard or William the Conqueror. But listening to that show, when he got to this segment of British history about King Penda and his fight against the Northumbrians, King Oswy, I was really fascinated by it, and I wanted to learn more. And in my search, I found that somebody had written a novel about this. And I always say this about historical fiction, that good historical fiction is like taking sugar with your medicine. So it gives you an entertaining story that you can read like a novel, but it's based in historical fact. And there are some people out there who are historical novelists who are just using history as a backdrop to tell a story that didn't happen. There are other people who take actual history and novelize it, like Jeff Shera and Annie Whitehead, for example, who are writing a novel based off of what really happened. And usually what they do is, like, even Annie, and I understand this, she said, okay, I had to compress a few events and speed things up. But she tells you in the end of the book. So when you read Annie Whitehead's story about Penda and his children, you're getting pretty close to the real thing. And then and the things that are not close to real things, she's going to tell you at the end, okay, hey, by the way, I moved this event here and because this worked better, blah, blah, blah. I make no judgments on that. I try to do that as very little as possible. My biggest sin in that, I would say to date, is that I had an explosion happen during a battle, but I had the explosion happen maybe a few hours earlier into the battle than when I had than it really happened in real life. That's it. That's the worst I've ever done. But the explosion did happen during that battle. I just moved it up a little bit to compress time. And I had in the latest book, I had Otto von Bismarck and Moltke have an exchange that happened the night before, and I put that exchange during the battle because it just didn't. I wanted that line in there, but it didn't make sense to like write the whole scene just for them to say that line, and then later on, it just worked better here. So something that we do, but when we do it, good authors will always put it in the historical note. Hey, I moved this over a little bit, but we're keeping as true as possible. So anyway, I read The Cometh Hour and I loved it. I thought it was a great book. I highly recommend it. It was fun. I got to tell you, Annie Whitehead writes action really well. I mean, there's a scene where like, good God, I mean, like it's pretty wild. She's really good at writing that. So I liked it, and I read it. I think did I read it before I even started this? I've been writing all my life, but this go at actually writing books and publishing them, I might have read it before that. So anyway, I think she might have been on a podcast or someone mentioned her, one of my other author friends. And I wrote, hey, I really love Annie. I read her Cometh Hour. It was great. Well, she liked my tweet and said, hey, guess what? I got the new one, the sequel is out to it. And oh, great, awesome. And I was really touched because I tried to send her a friend request when I first read Cometh Hour, and she didn't accept my friendship. But I went and checked out the sequel, which is this one right here to the Cometh Hour. Let's get back to this, which is The Sins of the Father. And when I got there, it was she had it at 99-cent special. Right now, the Kindle version is $2.99, and $3 for the Kindle, $17 for the paperback. And I was like, 99 cents, done. I don't have a lot of money to throw around to buy books, so usually I only buy them if they're on 99 cents special, or I'll get them from the library. I'm on a starving artist budget. I mean, look at me. I'd be fat right now if I was making good money. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So I downloaded it, and then I put it into my list, and I have a backlist. And so if any of you are like, why aren't you reading my book? It's because I have like 20 books that are already on my list right now. And it's still, I just downloaded another book that I couldn't say no to. And so I'm backlogged on it. So I finally got around to reading this book, and I really liked it. And the thing I said about Annie is that she's not just a fiction writer, but she also does nonfiction. And you can tell that because, like, for example, she pays close attention to detail, like how they make things, the flowers that are in bloom at different times of the year, where in the places that they are, and the food that they eat, and the differences between the Northumbrian and the Mercian culture. I also liked it. I liked about the book that like I said, the characters feel really realistic. There's the main character Ethelred, and I would say the other main character would be Oswitha. I'm probably saying her name wrong, but she's a daughter of King Oswy, and she's an interesting character because you kind of feel bad for her, but she's also kind of devious too, and kind of like missing her moral compass because she grew up raised by a dad that was not a good actor, and then a brother that replaced him that is also the same thing, that kind of warped her sense of what right and wrong. And she eventually ends up amongst the Mercians. And I won't give up too much, but it's kind of tragic because I think deep down inside really wants to be a good person and wants to do right, but she's struggling with her own raising and the expectations of her, and what is, what gets affection from the men that she grew up around versus what it gets affection from the Mercians. So she has a hard time fitting in. And, there's a lot, it's a kind of a tragic tale. And I think that the core theme of the whole book is that because we follow the children of Penda and we follow the children of Oswy, how they interact, sometimes mixing in marriages, sometimes mixing in battles and war, and how hard it is for these families to escape from this endless cycle of violence and tragedy. So I think it's a great book. You could read it without reading the first book, the Cometh Hour. I like the first book better only because I was very interested in Penda, but this is also a very interesting book, and it's basically the story of Ethelred, who is Penda's son, who the I won't spoil too much, but his story about how he rises to power and what happens to him in the end. And it's a very interesting story with him too. And I remember I had forgotten enough from the podcast so that I didn't quite know how the story was going to end. So good times. All right. So that's the longest I've ever gone without talking about me. So let's talk about me. I have a book out. You may not know this, but I just published my 5th novel here. This is The Prussian Prince, and written by me. And look at that, 5 stars. That's what I mean. Like, that won't last. I only have 4 people who've rated it, and thank you so much if you have. And I would love to stay at 5 stars, but it'll start dropping as we get 3 and 4-star reviews, and hopefully I won't get any 2s or 1s, because I feel like 3 should mean it's good. It's good. Yeah, it's a good book. I enjoyed it. That should be what 3 is. 4 is like, yeah, man, this is really good. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed it a lot. 5 is like, holy shit, this thing's great. So please give me 5 stars. Anyway, it's $4.99 for the Kindle. There's an audio version that's $5.99. But if you buy the Kindle version, you can get the audio version as an add-on for $1.99. So that's like $7 gives you the written Kindle and the audio version. And we'll take a sample of that in a minute. The paperback's $12, and the hardcover is $17. In fact, we can look at it. Let's look at a hardcover here. I'm going to pull this up here and see if I can do this. My friend and fellow author, Lloyd Elmore Jr., got a copy, and I'm pretty sure he bought a hardcover. And I don't ever think I've ever seen a hardcover version of my book, because I work out of my home, and I get the here we go. Let's see, here we go. StreamYards, and then we're going to remove that, and then we're going to do something else. There's got to be an easier way to do this, but this is the way I'm doing it right now. Let's see here. Yeah, Facebook. So here's a photo of Lloyd's copy. Make that fit. There it is, folks. In all its triumph, The Prussian Prince, an Austro-Prussian war novel. Stop that. That music that you're hearing is Poisson Gloria, which means Prussian glory. It's a march. I really like it, and I've been using it for a lot of my marketing. And then Lloyd kind of picked that up. But this is what the hard cover looks like. You see the binding here. It's a laminate top. It looks really nice. I went with the glossy. All my books have been matte covers, but this one, just the the picture was so dynamic and had such rich blacks in it that I was like, you know what, this should be glossy. And I did some research, and yeah, it bore out to be that's what it should be. Okay, so let's see if I can. Can I? There's got to be a faster way of doing this, but this way we're going to do it. All right. So that's what the hardcover looks like. And so, what is my book about? An American Civil War veteran must survive a clash of empires if he's going to find his way back to the woman he loves. This is book 5 of the Long Century series, although you do not need to read the previous books to enjoy this one, and I wrote it all in caps just to make sure you're paying attention. The Prussian Prince is a swashbuckling adventure that'll take you into the heart of the Austro-Prussian War, featuring historically accurate depictions of the Battle of Trottenau and Königgrätz with real historical characters such as Otto von Bismarck, King William I, and the Crown Prince Friedrich Wilhelm, and so much more as Germany marches towards unification and dominance over Central Europe. And, if you go and you're like, well, Cody, and by the way, the link to this and to Annie's book is in the description here. You're like, looks interesting, but how do I know it doesn't suck? Well, this is how you know. You can click on, let me do that over again. If you look at beneath the cover, there is read a sample and virtual voice sample. So read a sample. That's what we're doing. So it starts you right on the preface there, and you can read that, where I just kind of set up the historical background of of what you're about to read. You don't have to read it, but it might help you if you're like. And then there's the dedication and the epithets, and then it starts. Chapter 1, The Little Prince. March 1848, Berlin, the Kingdom of Prussia. And here we go. And I think you can read all the way into the second chapter. So, by then, the German officer, by that time, you should, if you're not hooked in by then probably you won't like it. And I think what I like about this is it forces authors to be better. And, so many books have long drawn out beginnings. And I think you really need to just pull people in right away, because people don't finish books. So you got to give them reasons to keep writing or reading. And so I believe in action in the first chapter, like things happening in the first chapter. I believe every chapter should be like that. Every chapter should have something exciting to keep you going. Every chapter, to me, when I write, is a Netflix episode. That's what I think of. Now, I am a beta tester for the new AI narrations. And what that means is Amazon came to me and said, we're asking a handful of authors to test this out. It's not going to be perfect. So we want to be able to, get the bugs out. Would you be willing to be one of our testers? And I said, absolutely. I was one of the beta testers for the hardcovers as well. And by the way, if you're an author and you're like, well, how come I didn't get that? Well, you're going to get it. They want to get it right first before they put it out to everybody. So I'm just one of the guinea pigs. So here's what here's what it sounds like if you get the audio version. This is an AI voice.
This title is narrated with virtual voice. Computer-generated narration for audiobooks.
There you go.
The Prussian Prince by Cody C. Engdahl.
I don't like that.
Preface. Thank you for picking up this book, and welcome to the series. Let me say this right away. You don't have to read the previous novels to enjoy this one. I made sure that everything you need to know to follow this story is contained in this book. In fact, you could even skip the rest of this preface and go straight to chapter 1. However, here are a few things that can help in general.
All right, so there you go. You don't have to read the preface to enjoy the book, but if you want a little bit more background about the history, but even if you didn't do that, I try to put as much into it as organically and naturally as possible so that you can understand what's going on. So that is what's going on with that. There's my little commercial. What am I reading next? I am reading I'm kind of backlogged because Angus Donald's third episode of The Broken Kingdom, he's putting that out like in like five chapter chunks as episodes, and then eventually he's going to combine them all into a novel and ultimately a trilogy. So I like the idea of like putting things out, but the problem is that I am now realizing, and I was more interested as an author. Again, let's see my I was more interested as an author of like a novel way. It's not actually new, but a new way of delivering storytelling. Now, this is something that was very popular in the 19th and early 20th century, where sometimes authors would write a serial that would appear in a magazine or a book, and eventually you'd get the whole story. And then once the whole story came out in the paper, then they would compile it and put it out as a novel. And this is how, like the Musketeers and Alexander Dumas' books are written this way. And so Angus was exploring this as well. He is a commercially published author, but he is also, and like I said, if you're commercially published, you have to kind of stick to Romans, Vikings, and Nazis. But he is doing like a side project as an independent. So I wanted to be on board with that. Problem was, it's hard to keep up with it because I'm always reading something. So when the new episode comes out, I'm in the middle of a book. Then I was on a waiting list to read the number one historical fiction book for months now, and the number one historical military fiction book is The Light That We Don't See. And the line to read that was like 300 people deep at the library. Well, my number came up. And so this is it. This is my opportunity to read it. It's kind of inconvenient because I told Angus I was going to read his episode 3 once I got done reading Annie Whitehead's. Well, this has come up. And then I want to read another book because I'm going to start writing my 6th novel in the beginning of March. And that one's going to, you'll see why, but it's going to start in Mexico with the execution of the Emperor Maximilian. And so there's a good novel written about that. That's it. I said, this is great. And some nonfiction stuff that I'm getting as well. But just to give me some color. And that's, I want to read that too. So I'm probably going to read those 2 novels, and then I'm going to get to Angus's episode. And then I'm going to get on. Well, I can show you guys this actually. I'm not afraid to. Let's see here. Let's stop. I got a message. Someone texted me. I think it'd be faster to look at my phone. Oh yeah, Laura, my girlfriend. Okay. So I have to keep track of all the books I'm going to read. I have a to-do list, and this is on Apple products, and just to show you where I am right now. And so this is why, if you're like, why aren't you reading my book? Well, this is why. Let's see, share screen, and then we're gonna do let's do window, and let's do reminders. Okay. All right. Yeah, there you can see. So, yeah, all the light we cannot see. So that is a novel. They made a movie out of it, and the movie is on Netflix. And Laura doesn't like all the violence, but she does like World War II stuff. And I feel like the series that I'm writing is moving towards that. I don't know if I'm going to get into World War II, but I will say this: there are plans for the series that I'm writing right now to go at least into World War I. So anyway, this is my opportunity to finally read that, and I'm going on the road next week, so I'm going to try to read that while I'm away. And then that way, when I come back, Laura and I can watch the movie. Laura thought about reading it herself, but she doesn't think she's going to get to it in time. So that's fine. And then I want to read The Last Prince of the Mexican Empire, a novel based on a true story. That's the story about Maximilian. And I'm going to be writing something. My story begins with his death. And so, and this is tied into like where the Prussian Prince ends. The next book, The French Fiasco, is going to start in Mexico, but it's going to make sense. I promise you. And then I have Angus's episode, The Broken Kingdom, episode 3, Author's Revenge. Then I want to read The Hawker and the King's Jewel by Ethan Bale. He was on Rock, Paper, Swords, and I really liked him. And this sounds everything I ever wanted to read in a book, because it's an era. Like I like the late Middle Ages, early Renaissance. So this is like 1400s, and it's after the War of the Roses, but right around the time of Dracula, who was a real person. And somehow he's connecting the two, in which a guy from the House of York, the losing side of the War of the Roses, is in exile and ends up on an adventure and meets Dracula. And the real Dracula, as far as we know, wasn't a blood-sucking vampire, but probably something more monstrous than that. He's the famous one that impaled thousands of enemy soldiers to scare them away. And then let's see, Stigmata. I don't know if I'm going to read all these in this order, but Stigmata is another one of Colin Falconer's. He and I are Facebook friends. He's a nice guy. I recommend his books. It's a series, but none of them are connected, as far as I know. So each book is its own thing, and they jump all around from ancient world to 19th century to who knows. I think there's even World War II in there. And then I got the Complete Fletcher Adventure books by John Drake, $1 for the all 7. So I don't know if they're any good, but for $1, I'm worth a try. Because the book after The French Fiasco is going to be Black James, which is going to be about the character Black James that you met in Mexico, My Love. He's going to get his own novel, and it's going to be a late pirate novel, because the golden age of piracy is like somewhere between the 1600s and the late 1600s, early 1700s is the golden era of piracy. So Black James is kind of late to the game because he's a 19th century pirate, but that'll be interesting. And then The Diamond Hunter, Paul Frazier was one of the first established authors to treat me like an equal and be kind to me. And I read the first book of this series. It's the Jack Lark series. I can't remember the name of the first book, but the first book deals with the Crimean War. And the concept is fabulous. It's basically this guy. It's like the Incredible Mr. Ripley mixed with Richard Sharp. So it's a 19th century, musket and sword kind of stuff. The character is an imposter. In the first book, he is a lowly private who is the an orderly to a captain. They get shipped off to a new unit together to fight in Crimea. Well, the captain dies along the way, and so this guy Jack Lark takes on the captain's identity and shows up, and I think every novel is kind of based off of this idea in which this guy is pretending to be something he's not. And Paul has been able to do all sorts of things, like have him go to India. He has him in the American Civil War on both sides, which is something I did too. My main character ends up fighting for both the Union and the Confederacy at some point in the trilogy. This is book 11. I don't know if it's the latest, but it's 1871, called Diamond Hunter. The book starts in the 1850s. So this is 20 years. So I've only read the first book, and there's a lot of books in between. And like I said, I only really buy things if they're 99 cents because I can't really afford to spend a lot of money in books right now. So buy my books so I can afford to buy other people's books, please. So it'll be interesting to see where Paul the change between Paul's first book and and the latest one with this character. And then Sworn to God, that an exciting medieval thriller based on a real religious cult. This is by my friend Steve Mackay. Steve Mackay is a great writer. He's got a really good Robin Hood series. Then he's got a series based off his own character called Bellicose and Bellicus, and Bellicus is a druid warrior. And I read the first of both those series, and he right now, so Steve Mackay is one of those Cinderellas that started in the trenches like me as an independent, and then got a major publisher asking him to write a series. So he's writing a series about King Alfred, and the first one is out, The Heathen Horde. I see it's doing really well, and the next one's coming out, and I forgot what it's called, but that's coming out soon. Reason why first of all, Stephen Mackay is great. I've read a lot of his books because he offers a lot at 99 cents. So like I said, if someone's got a 99-cent book out there, I'm going to read it. I'll try to read it and do a review. Then Serena Dory, she is, I don't know how we became friends, who friended who first, but she writes young adult fantasy, and she has a series about, it's very much like Harry Potter, but it's more like for girls, and it's like a witch school. And the illustration, I just fell in love with the illustrations. There's like fun, there's a lot of fun play on words and puns dealing with witchcraft and things like that. And the illustrations are kind of sexy, but cute and sexy. Like, like it's a witch and she's on and kind of a clunky style of drawing. She's like on a broom flying, and she's wearing like striped stockings that are held up by garter belts. I'm like, yeah, I want to read that, because I'm a pervert. So, but anyway, she's really nice, and she's very prolific and also a very well-established author. I think she's an independent, but that doesn't mean anything anymore. Like independents can do as well. And I think in today's age, even better than most of your commercial authors. And I'll qualify that in a minute. And then I want here are some that are not written by others. I just want to read Flashman, which is it was written in a series written in the 19th century. I think it was a serial, and it sounds great. It's about an unscrupulous man in the 19th century who's a coward who goes on all these adventures. It sounds wonderful. Sounds like the kind of series I would like to write. Taipei is written by the great. Now I'm going to forget the name as soon as I said that. It's written by the same guy who wrote. I can't think of it now. The samurai, the famous samurai book and movie, and movies, because I think they're doing another version of it. Oh, I cannot think of his name or the name of the Shogun. It's the guy who wrote Shogun, and which I watched in the 70s, and that's a great version. I understand that one of the streaming services is redoing it. I hope it's good. I'm very suspect of anything that's being remade today because everything's woke. Yes, I'm one of those jerks that's like, everything's woke. Just don't mess with history. Like I want to see, strong female leads and, people of diversity and all that. But if that's not how it really was, don't do that. I don't like it. I want my history to be true. If you want to do things about women, great. Then do about real women. If you want to do things about black people, great. Do it about real black people. Don't change things. Don't tell me that Anne Boleyn was black. Because she wasn't. Sorry, I'll get off my high horse. So Taipei, what is his name? He's a great Cavill. Is it James Cavill? Or is that my friend from Utah? But it's Cavill or something like that. Anyway, this story is the sequel to Shogun, but Shogun takes place in 1600, where this takes place in the mid-19th century, because all the books are related, and they basically are about Europeans coming into Asia and mixing with Asia. So you have, European culture that goes all the way back to Mesopotamia and Egypt, and Asian culture that goes back to the ancient settlements along the Yellow River. them beginning to introduce themselves to each other, starting in the 1600s and going on. So basically, the books are connected in that they all exist in the same world. So there might be references to what happened in Shogun that are in Taipei. Taipei is about is it Taiwan? It's kind of the story about Taiwan, at least how it becomes kind of a political entity. Of course, it's very pertinent to today because Taiwan may be one of the triggers of World War III and the death of the human race, as well as some other races when this planet becomes a nuclear wasteland. Brandon Sanderson, I do like science fiction and fantasy. It's not my favorite genre. My favorite genre is the one I write in, which is historical fiction. But I feel like fantasy and science fiction and space fantasy. Well, I guess space fantasy is fantasy. Differences between science fiction and fantasy and space fantasy is science fiction. Well, I won't get into it, but I do like that genre. And what I think makes it very close to historical fiction is all of them are escapist. It's like I'm tired of my own time. I'm not really interested in, there's enough going on in my own time. There's enough drama that I got plenty entertained with that. I don't need someone to make shit up that's not actually happening that takes place now, because there's plenty happening now that is more interesting. So I'd rather read a historical novel. And like I said, there are people who write historical novels that it's like, well, it's just a story that I made up that with the backdrop of history. I like the ones that are more intertangled with the real history. Like the way I write is basically that way. I have fictional characters that have their own story, but the historical aspects in my books are true. That I'm kind of like in the middle ground there. So Brandon Sanderson is, I've never heard of him, but apparently he is like, he's got to be famous for something. I'm sure there's something that you can watch. It's a series somewhere. But he is like the big name now in like space fantasy or sci-fi, and commercially published. So I'm telling you, people who are commercially published are backing away from their publishers and going independent like me now, because we have more direct control, and it's no longer that the corporations are the gatekeepers anymore. So Sanderson says, okay, well, I'm going to try a little experiment here. I'm going to do an independent book, but I'm going to crowdfund it. So he went on like Kickstarter or Indiegogo or something like that. And I think he wanted $100,000 to launch the book, So basically $100,000 to write the book. And then I guess, I don't know, he'd independently publish it, all that, and all the backers would get a copy. He raised like $30 million. Unfreaking believable. And see, this is the free market, because some people were mad because like, oh, everybody's throwing their money on another white man. Well, it's the free market, man. Like the publishers will say, well, we only want to publish these people here or these people here. We want to give these people a leg up or whatever. Okay, fine. But don't be mad when I'm going to compete with you in the free market. And that's what Brandon Sanderson did, $30 million. So I want to know what makes Brandon Sanderson an author that can do a independent published book that's not even out yet, and pull $30 million in advance. I want to read what this guy is writing. And then finally, and this might get moved up on the list, Dynasty Killers. So this is my friend Pinson Wu. We're going to have Pinson Wu soon. So Baptiste Pinson Wu, he's an independent like me. And like me, because he's not writing for a big commercial publisher, he doesn't have to write Romans, Vikings, and Nazis. He can do what he wants. So he's got, this is that series about the War of Three Kingdoms, which is like 300 AD around that time, China. I read the first two; they were great, and I read the first two because he was putting them out for only $1. And he's got a very interesting thing. He's putting all his back catalog at $1. So the third book was now 99 cents. And I'm like, and I've known this. This is why I have such a backlog to grab deals when they come up, because just because something's 99 cents now doesn't mean it'll be 99 cents later. So I go ahead and buy that stuff. So I figured, well, 99 cents. And I did read the first two. And this is the capstone of that trilogy. There'll be more in the series, but the series is like several trilogies that, one trilogy will take place with this narrator in this time. Because I think the War of the Three Kingdoms is like a long span of history, perhaps. Baptiste is a great guy. He's really interesting. He's French. He's married to a Chinese woman, and they live together in Japan, and they have kids and all that. And he writes. He's native of France. French is his first language, but he writes in English because the market is bigger. The English language market is just by far the biggest market out there for books. And so even if English isn't your first language, you probably want your stuff published in English more than anything else. And then you can look at Spanish and German and Chinese and French, all that kind of stuff. He's got a new book out is coming out, I think, February 22nd, called The Undead Samurai, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if I'm interested in reading it myself, but Pinson Wu is a guy, he likes, he comes from like the video game generation. In fact, he got into the the War of the Three Kingdoms because apparently there's a video game that you can play that's based in this, and then he wanted to tell the story. And so the Undead Samurai is like a mixture of, it's like historical fantasy, which is an interesting thing, and that's what Angus Donald's King Arthur series is too. It's historical fantasy. It is interesting, and I'm enjoying Donald's Arthur take. So I might read this, but it's basically zombies in 1600 Japan during the beginning of the shogunate. So there is a Netflix series. It's Korean, and they do kind of the same thing where it's like, I forgot what the name of it is, but it's medieval or Renaissance Korea, and they're fighting the undead. And I watched a little bit. It was pretty good. So anyway, he's a good writer, and he's a nice guy. I like him a lot. And he's also got like a YouTube channel. So he does a little bit what I do, as well as he's writing in the genre, but he's also talking about it and doing things. So that's on my list. I probably started subjects and I never got back around to, but I wanted to share that with you, and I might change that list. Let's see. Let's remove that and bring up me. So that's it. That's all I got today. I'm going out of town Monday. I have a new job, so I still do like side short contract stuff to kind of pay the bills. And actually, I kind of like it to help bring in the money to go along with my book sales. So I will be. I'm going to basically not Washington D.C., but in that area to do some training. I think I'm going to be actually in Maryland, and then so I don't know if I'll be doing another one of these. This kind of counts for what I would normally do this coming Sunday, and I might do one to come back. I might do one from my hotel room. We'll see. We'll see how I feel. And oh yeah, just in case you're curious, we'll do it one more time. We'll end on a commercial here. We'll end on self promotion. That's what this is all about. For those of you who are wondering, how is the launch doing? So we launched this book last Saturday. So this, by midnight tonight, it'll be week 1. And I track all the books. I track how each book performs week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then all 5 weeks, first 5 weeks, and then month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then in total. And I'm not going to talk specifics, but I will tell you this: the first marker or first thing that I was taking note of is pre-orders, and I ran pre-orders on let's see, on Blood for Blood. I did that. It was pathetic. I got a couple pre-orders, but not a whole lot. I wasn't phased by that. It was the first time I tried it. I did it with Mexico My Love. I did better. I did markedly better, 6 times better, I guess I would say. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I did it with this book, and I got over 3 times as many, almost 4 times as many pre-orders. Prussian Prince got 4 times more pre-orders than I did with Blood for Blood. So each book that comes out does better than the last one, and with each one, I grow exponentially. So like, and what I found is as you put out new books, as long as people are enjoying the series, which I believe people are, because I see like my second and third book and fourth book are constantly selling. So that means people are reading the first book and they like it, and they come back and they read the second, third, and fourth. So I'm getting the read through. I'm doing well. So with each new book, you get bigger, because not only do I sell a bunch of the new book, The Prussian Prince, but now people are seeing that for the first time and saying, either they're reading it and like, this is great, I want to go back and read the whole series, or they see it like, hey, this is great, but I want to start with book 1, and they're going and buy Rampage on the River. So I'm doing pretty well. So with each book, the back catalog sells more. And with this book, I will say this, that my pre-orders were 4 times what the pre-orders were for the last one. That's great. I hope I can beat that again next time. I will say that day 1 of the release of Prussian Prince blew away the first week and first month of Mexico My Love. And we're about to wrap up the first full week of sales for Prussian Prince. And my first full week of Prussian Prince has outperformed the first week of Blood for Blood. I'm sorry, first week of Mexico My Love, the first month of Mexico My Love, and possibly, if I get a few more sales, the first week of the Prussian Prince will be the first 2 months combined of Mexico My Love. So it is doing way better than the last one, which is intimidating, because then how do I beat this one with the next one? And it is more than halfway to the total sales that I got from the first 5 months of Mexico My Love. The Prussian Prince within the first week is over half of that. So it is doing very well. I'm very proud of it. I'm very happy. I've gotten great sales from the UK and the US. I haven't sold anything outside of those 2, but those are 2 really big reader markets. We'll see if I get anything out of Australia and Canada. And I've sold books like in Mexico and Germany and India and Japan as well. So hopefully some of those other guys. I would really like to get a German, I'm not, so it's not my dream to be published by a big publisher. It's my dream to be to make a successful life out of writing books on a big readership. And I'm more than happy to do that on my own. But what I would be interested in is a German publisher coming to me and making a deal and say, hey, we would like to be your publisher in the German language, because the German reading market is really big. That's why I care more about that than like French or Spanish, because the Germans like this kind of stuff, and this stuff does sell in Germany. And so it'd be great if there was a German publisher who wanted to partner up with me and say, we want to do your translations and basically be your publisher in Germany. That would be great. I might at someday seek that out myself. Of course, I'm just sitting around waiting for the phone call, which is never going to happen if I do nothing. We'll see. I got a lot to work on here before I start doing that. But anyway, the Prussian Prince, man, I think a lot of people are excited about the cover and the concept because, like I said, a lot of the books out there, especially from the big publishers, are Romans, Vikings, and Nazis. And here is 19th century European warfare, Prussians with spiked helmets. There's not a lot of competition out there in this little tiny subgenre. What would be really funny is if this book really does well, and all of a sudden everybody's writing Prussian books. they've oversaturated the Roman market. They've oversaturated the Viking market, oversaturated the Nazis, and now everybody's writing Prussians. Who knows? I can only hope. Well, no, because then they'll squeeze me out of my own little niche here. Anyway, I love you guys. I went way too long. It's Friday. I figured today I wanted to experiment with different times. I haven't really this show hasn't really landed anywhere yet as far as like official. I don't think it ever will. It's just kind of like when I feel like it. If you're an author and you ever want to come on, I watch a lot of YouTubers, and one of my favorite, he just goes live when he wants to, and he'll have other people on sometimes, and he'll promote other people's books. And he's a comic book guy. And they'll talk about it. And I'd like to have it very informal like this. Like, these are not like a podcast or episode or anything like that. This is very informal. If you ever want to come on, say, hey, Cody, I got a book. Can I come on your show? Yeah, let's do it, man. I want to talk about your book. I want to help you sell it. No, I really do. And, I might have readers that would be interested in your book. Or there might be people that follow me, but they're not interested in what I write, but they might be interested in what you write. So let me know. And I love you guys. By the way, if you've read any of my books, please give me a review, as many stars as you feel I deserve. I think I deserve 5, but I'm not allowed to say that. And also, your favorite writers out there, go out there and give that author 5 stars, man, and tell the world why you think they're great. Okay, love you guys. I don't know when I'll be on next. I'll try to do another one. I might do one from my hotel room a week from Sunday. We'll see. Take care.